Welcome to Will Talks. Today I have this incredible guy who I have known for over 10 years now. I think 10 years ago, perhaps in 2010, maybe 12 years ago, I met him at a leadership conference and I was amazed at the ideas that he brought to table. I was amazed at the freshness of thought. I was amazed at his creativity. His name is Akshay Cherian and today he runs an organization called the Business Sherpa. And I thought just that name itself just communicates so much. Business Sherpa. It's almost like, when you see people climbing the Mount Everest, you have this guy standing there with a photograph and he says, with a flag or something, and he's the guy who's climbed Mount Everest. But there's a Sherpa behind him, the guy who's guiding him, the guy who's done that again and again and again, over and over again. And just for me to see that Akshay is calling himself a business Sherpa, that itself tells you and sets the context to our talk, because it's going to be so fresh, it's going to be new, it's going to be innovative, and it's going to be a lot of personal experiences. So Akshay, thank you so much for coming in today and spending this time with us. Tell us a little bit more about who you are, any context that you want to talk about today that our listeners and audience would like to know about the conversation that we're going to have. Go ahead and use this time to really give us a feel of where you've come from, the experiences you've had, and what's really shaped you.
Thank you, Will. That's a very intense welcome. But no, I love the energy, and obviously I've seen your work and followed it thanks to social media. I think you could summarize my life as an attempt to follow my father. I think that is really what it is. So it's a pale imitation, but the attempt is there. I think the question that has animated my work for so many years is, what do you do when you have these outsized dreams, but you're under-resourced, you're the underdog, nobody really gives you a shot. And other than hustling, okay, let's assume you work hard. Other than hustling, what are the other levers? If you aren't born in wealth, or if you aren't born into a powerful family, how do you move the needle? So that's sort of been my question. And specifically, I'm drawn to people who dream big and then are willing to do something about it. And I go out of my way to seek time with them. Just to give you an idea, that every Friday evening is set aside to meet unhurriedly with somebody. Could be old friends, could be new friends, it doesn't matter what it is. And I try not to work. Particularly post-COVID, I felt that I'm very grateful for time with friends. So this is a little bit of a smattering. My dad's influence, some of the questions that are on my mind, what I like to put time towards. And I just say I'm blown away by the effort and the prep you guys have put in here. I was totally caught off guard. But I'm happy to come here. And as somebody that does a podcast myself, you're challenging me to raise my standard, right? And I look forward to a two-way conversation.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you say that much of your life now is about following the footsteps of your dad. Wow. That's, having a parent who continues to inspire you or me is such a gift, right? Because I remember that my father, I was born to my father when he was 50 years old. To many, it's like having a grandfather as your father. And hence he came with this amazing patience, this amazing wisdom, this amazing sense of clarity. And like the waves that shape a stone, that's what I felt about that. And he always had this dream of starting a school, but he never could do it because of his health. And today Today, when I run my own school, I kind of feel like I'm living his dream, and that makes me extremely satisfied. And it also puts me in a relentless pursuit of always ensuring that his vision is accomplished to the highest possible standards. He doesn't even know I'm running the school, right? Because I lost him before I actually started the school. He thought I would end up being a computer engineer or something. So I really understand that. And tell me a little bit more about your dad, yeah. Who's this amazing person that you're actually following and you're trying to?
So I think, one interesting reflection is, when you love your parents, in some ways you try to live out the dreams that they had, I think one sort of reflection that came to me as I was thinking about this is, I would say that my 20s were blindly copying my father. And I think my 30s are consciously copying my father and then finding other inspiration. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because you can't, I think it's a little dangerous, and this is hindsight wisdom, it's a little dangerous to have one mentor for your whole life. You got to kind of look at like fitness, finances, fun, and you need to kind of have different role models. I didn't have that perspective growing up. My dad couldn't do any wrong, and I think that I was blind, and I can see that a little bit more clearly now. And I think for me, I'll tell you a little story that reminds, like it's forever etched in my brain. So I used to be in Chennai. Bangalore was the cool city to come to. Then cousins were here. So I would come to Bangalore. And I remember being in McDonald's, and that was when McDonald's was cool. So this is a very, very long time ago, right? And I was sitting in McDonald's, and a friend of mine, my cousin, is introducing me to his friend. And he's saying, oh, this is Akshay Cherian, blah, blah, blah. We're talking, we're connecting. And then suddenly he says, oh, Akshay Cherian. And he says, wait, are you Bert Cherian's son? Now, I don't know how other people would have interpreted. Maybe pride, maybe whatever. I felt terror.
Really?
Because I remember it's one of my very shaping moments. And I just suddenly felt like, you know what? I'm following a man who, and he went on to a story about how my father's had invested in a group of people and built friendships, and they have done it, and they have been his seniors. And when he was in a low point in his life, they supported him. Now, this is 20 years later, right? From BITS. My dad had studied in BITS. And I just remember feeling, there was pride for 1 second, and then there was fear for the rest of the meeting. And the fear was, what if I never become like that? What if I never become somebody that 20 years later, somebody says, wow, this person has made a difference, right? And so I think that, and there have been many incidents like this, So I think first and foremost, my dad has been somebody who's deeply cared for people. And in response to that, I tried to start a student movement out of college. I studied in Stevens. And only when I started the movement and we found out, like I remember we used to just get people together and we used to have these conversations of what should your education be? What do we want to learn? I was quite disillusioned with the education I had in Delhi University. And I had close friends of mine who suddenly started opening up about sexual abuse, about this, about broken homes, about dysfunctionality. And I then realized how sheltered I was. I always thought that this happens to other people, like somebody, but not my friends. Yeah. So I it's hard to summarize a person's life, but I wanted to give you two perspectives. How much he sheltered me, and then sort of this one incident that and I'm sure when you look at your journey with your dad or parent, there are these moments that shape. You kind of, you decide that, okay, I'm going to do my best to either be that or not be that, right?
Absolutely.
So I don't know if any thoughts come to your mind about that.
It does actually, because, parenting is the highest form of leadership. And so much about my worldview, so much about my perspectives are shaped by what I've seen from my father and my mother. I can give you so many instances that come to my mind. Like one of the instances that came to my mind is in 8th standard when my dad was bedridden. He told me, go to the bank and, start an account, and you got to take care of your mom. And I went to the bank and I started an account, and I had a bank account set up in 8th standard. And I remember in 12th standard, I bought a second-hand bullet, like an Enfield, and my dad was still on bed. He couldn't get off and come down. And when I went to him and I told him I got a second-hand bullet, this is like 12th standard or first year grad, he said, can you start the engine and can you race it up a little bit? I want to hear the engine. Because he was a biker apparently. And he was like, that's a good bike. There's so many instances, small little emotive experiences that has really shaped the way I think. And that's really shaped the way I've grown into. And I totally understand what you're saying, because there are so many, I don't know if my dad would have done the very same things. And I'm not speaking morally. I'm speaking, from a contextual perspective, like today. and that is the growth for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, how would he probably do things today?
Yeah.
Morally, of course, it's all the same, but in that sense, so that is just absolutely beautiful and wonderful. And I totally relate to that. How did you, what I want to understand is, like, in at the age of 20 in college, when you heard these stories from your friends, that really made you feel upset, I'm sure, because you were stunned and you were shocked, and then I think you went out and did some amazing things, right? I mean, I've heard stories of you finding jobs for 800 people or so, and tell me more about that. What was that experience like when you were 20, starting off, thinking of starting your own organization? You started People First, I think, and you made that into a movement. What are those things that shaped you there? What are the things that you learned from that?
So I think, after the fact, everybody can talk about inspiration, but it was desperation in my case. Because I had done all the right things. I had done academically well. I had gotten to the right school. And then even in the clubs, I had gotten into the right clubs. But nothing was happening, And I had the moment that crystallized this sort of crisis of faith, and I would call it that, was, I found out that I had a friend, like he was a batchmate in a different course doing history honors. His name is Bharat. Bharat, if you're ever watching this, you should know that meeting you was a turning point in my life. But Bharat was blind. And the way Bharat studied was somebody had to read his notes to him. Bharat's problem was when it was exam time, there was nobody to read notes to him. And something about it infuriated me. I was like, here's a guy with a great determination to study, but there isn't, a solution. And I was not much of a person to know what to do. I mean, until then you had the answers in the book. As long as you scored well, as long as you were head boy, everything was okay, right? So I think I racked my brains and I couldn't think about what to do about it. So that summer when I came back to Chennai, which was home, I called all my friends. I walked into IIT Chennai. A couple of them were there. And I said, this is the problem. You guys claim you're the smartest. Tell me, what should the answer be? And this is a pattern that comes back many times in my life, which is I have a sense of what's not working. I don't necessarily know what to do about it. The difference is, if I feel strongly enough, I will keep walking. And then very often people smarter than me will come alongside and they will have the answers, somebody once told me that, what I love is the courage that we experience together. It's not really, I don't have the answers, and I didn't have the answers there. So a couple of these friends, Sharath, if you're listening to this, thanks for that, So he was an IIT Chennai student, and a couple of others. We built a very simple Braille-based remote that plugged into the back of your computer, and we put all the lessons on Winamp. This is when Winamp was, right? So basically Bharat could study on his own. And Bharat was happy, and I got some feedback, and we built the solution. And then I was like, okay, there must be more Bharats. There must be more people that want to learn, right? So I was talking to some people, and they said you should write a business plan. That's what people do. So I'm like, okay, what is a business plan? Because there were no entrepreneurship cells, and none of those things were there. It was not cool. So I asked my friend Adit again, these are all shout outs to various friends over the years, I'm using this as a chance to thank them. But I asked Adit, and we were talking to a couple of other people, and they said, the best business school in India is IIM Ahmedabad. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to write a business plan, I'm going to only write it from IIM Ahmedabad. What is a business plan? Why should I write a business plan? No idea. I asked Adit how much money he had. He had 500 rupees. And I had a little bit more. I cobbled it together. I went to the station. I bought a ticket and I went to Ahmedabad.
Wow.
So I land up in Ahmedabad and I ask around for IIM Ahmedabad. I go into IIM Ahmedabad and then I start knocking on professors' doors saying that I had a photograph of Bharat. So I said, this is Bharat. I've built technology for him. They tell me I need a business plan. Can you help me write a business plan? So they are like, do you have an appointment? Which company are you from? Where are you? They're asking me all sorts of questions. And I'm like, I don't know about anything. Bharat's problem needs to be solved. Can you help me? After 5-6 professors, I understood that this is not the way to do this, right? And some of them were sweet and nice, and they were like, come back in 2 weeks' time. I'm like, boss, I've come here with like no money, nothing. I've just come. So I'm sitting in that quadrangle of I am Ahmedabad. If you've seen, it's like a square in the center. Right, I'm sitting in the quadrangle, and I'm really feeling like, what was I thinking? What is this? Right, and Professor Manimale, who teaches communication at IIM Ahmedabad, he's now at IIM Bangalore.
Manimala,
Yeah,
he's my uncle.
really?
Professor Manimala
Yes.
is my uncle. He used to run the entrepreneurship cell at IIM Bangalore.
Oh wow, this is a
And
very
he's written
small
like
world.
400-page book on entrepreneurship.
Well, he changed my life.
Wow. He's in Mysore now.
Oh, I have lost touch. You know,
Okay.
these are okay. This is like
Wow.
dots connecting in a completely different angle.
Go on.
No, but his graciousness. He walks by me and he says, "You don't look like you're from IIM Ahmedabad." I said, "Yes, sir. I'm in Stevens. I'm doing, just finished my first year. This is the same story. Bharat, blah blah blah." So he said, "Well, you have a lot of seniors here. Let me get them to help you write a business plan." So he messages Tushar Sinha, and Tushar gets a couple of his batchmates, and I'm sitting that evening. It's 8:00. There's Tushar Sinha, who topped Delhi University. I was one of the toppers. There was a IIT Kanpur gold medalist. There was a IIT Kharagpur gold medalist. They're all sitting around me and they're writing my business plan. And they're teaching me how a business plan is written. Right? And why do you need a business plan? And they're asking me all sorts of questions and I have no answers for most of the things. They take me out for dinner and at the end of that, I felt so overwhelmed by their generosity. I just thanked them and I left. I had a small problem, which is I had run out of money. I had money for the ticket back. I didn't have any money otherwise. And I decided to sleep on the railway platform. And something about it was too jarring for a middle-class kid like me. Like you see these movie scenes where people are on railway platforms and life is at the end. I didn't expect it to mean so much to me, but I don't know. Something about it really jarred me. It jarred me in the sense that I realized I was willing to do what it takes. Like sometimes you do something and then realize you've become a different person after doing it. It's not like you thought that. I don't know if this is communicating, right? So anyway, so that was sort of, and then I would tell that story to other young people. And I'd be like, what do you want to do? This is what I did for Bharat, right? And long story short, that business plan went to win on so many awards. The technology went to the National Association of the Blind. I then realized we needed to learn entrepreneurship. I set up an entrepreneurship cell in my college. So there's a lot, it leads to a lot of other things. But the point was very simple. And this would be maybe my message to particularly young people or people that have a dream in their heart. Do not let the size of the problem numb your heart. Fight for one if you can't fight for everyone, but fight. You have to get into the game. And it has to mean something. Like, to me, it was just Bharat. It was not scaling. It was not business. It was not entrepreneurship. I wanted to help Bharat.
I love what you're saying because I'll tell you why. Because one of the guys that I was speaking to, he said we need three things, right? You need to know what you want. Okay, clarity of thought, clarity of purpose, clarity of action. You need to know what you want. And then you need to know what is the price you need to pay. What is making this happen going to cost you? What is it that, and when I say cost, it's not just money, right? It's also about all the other sacrifices that you'd have to do or things that you'd probably lose in this. And many people sort of get to the stage of knowing 1 and 2. But the third one is you got to pay the price. And a lot of people don't pay the price. And I think that's where everything kind of falters. And I love the way that you said, because when you were talking about it, right, there were so many thoughts in my mind. Like one of the thoughts is you were just thinking of Bharat. You were thinking of his problem. You were thinking of making a difference to his life. And you were just being passionately stuck, to that particular problem. And the most beautiful thing is like you were not bothered about the answers. You do not consider yourself to be the smartest person in the room. You do not consider yourself to have all the answers. You just had that amazing amount of openness, let's even call it shamelessness, to get out there and ask people questions and find the solutions to that. I think that a lot of the young people today are not doing, right? The minute they have an idea, they think of, what is the scale? Is this $1 billion idea? Like I've heard, so many young people say that. They're like, don't do something if it's not $1 billion idea. Right? But what's wrong with the $1 million idea? Or what's wrong with the 100,000 K idea, right? I mean, you got to do something. Don't just get stuck with this idea. And the third thing that while you were talking came to my mind is like, asking the right questions, living with the questions, being passionately involved in finding the answers out, right? Those are things that I think a lot of people are not particularly doing. What I love in that story is that everything, to me, this sounds like a classic case of design thinking, where it just starts with deep empathy. to a problem
Right.
that somebody's just normalized it, and they've almost accepted that fate. And that's a sign of leadership when you go out there and you challenge that status quo. I mean, Bharat may have been like reasonably happy, that's all. Not like amazingly happy, right? But for you to make that change happen, I mean, so those are some amazing things that I that came through for me in this conversation. What about you? Like, how did that love for solving problems then take you? Where did it take you? And what is the next thing you did? And those would be some nice things too.
I actually, at some point, I want to ask you a little bit about how you started your school. So that's a question I have in my mind now.
Of course, yeah.
Right? Because to me, it's a legacy response, right? You saw something in your father and you decided to act on it.
Yeah.
Right? So, I don't know, put a pin holder on that. We should come back to it.
Definitely.
See, for me, it's always been the love for people. That's what I see in my father. It's a love for people. I would say that, at least for me, what works is to love people deeply enough that the price in relative proportion doesn't seem so much. Now, I remember being 26 or 27 and the movement was in full swing. There were so many people. Like, I would go to a city and there'd be 100 people to meet. And there are people breaking up, there are people going out, somebody is fighting with somebody, there's somebody has one. There's too much happening. And I remember being sick because I had worked so hard that I had fallen sick. And that used to be the only time I used to take a break, because in my head, I'm like, this is the future of education, what we are doing. Now, I call it a movement as a nice way to explain that it was a terrible business, right? And it was never meant to be a business, right? But I remember being sick in my bed thinking, I can't work any harder. And our impact is so small. There must be a better way. There must be a better way. And I think that I have learned to bring the mind, mechanics, frameworks to the heart, the desire to care, Otherwise, I think in the 20s, it was too much of heart. Okay, I love this person, I will do something for that person. Whether it makes sense, whether you are able to do it, whether, and I think when we shut the movement down and we ran out of money and I had to go shut the movement down, incidentally, that's how I started dating my now wife and my only wife, which is, so she decided to come with me. And as we went city to city and I told them that I've run out of money, I've run out of will, I've run out of ability to manage this, it's gone completely out of control, I'm not able to handle it. And she came with me. My friend sat me down and said, if somebody can put up with you at your lowest, when you have nothing, you should take that person seriously. And that's how I started dating Selvi. But that whole thing was a counter response then. For the next few years, I was like, okay, I'm going to find the tools. I'm going to learn how to do this. To be, and I'd read this book called Be So Good They Can't Ignore You. And it was an eye-opening book. It may have been the most influential book I've ever read. And the core thesis of the book was all the rare and all the interesting, fun things in the world are rare and valuable because by definition, many people want it. What are your rare and valuable skills? And I hadn't really built skills. Everything was, okay, I like Will, I'll do it for Will. And in the process of doing that, I'm learning something, right? But it wasn't like, okay, I will learn design thinking or I will learn how to code or I will learn how to run a lead campaign, And I realized, skills nahi hai. Heart is there, I need skills. So I think the next 6-7 years was just learning and hindsight wisdom, and I'm sorry, I'm unpacking a few things in here. The hindsight wisdom is because I was everybody's go-to person to listen to and to give advice and whatever, ironically, I was not learning fast enough. Because in every room, they're like, Akshay, what do you think? And I'm giving my opinion. Right? Oh. So I'm not learning fast enough. I didn't get into rooms where I was the dumb kid, where I didn't know enough. So it took me a few years to start actually learning. There were a few years where I felt sorry for myself. Oh, we have helped so many people. Nothing much has come out of our life. So on and so forth, right? And then, self-pity takes you nowhere.
How do I know if I'm learning? How do I know? Like, as I'm listening to you, I can relate to what you're saying. It's so easy to get into a room where everyone looks at you and expects
Yeah,
you
here
to
is Akshay,
answer.
he will say something
Ah,
interesting.
yeah,
Here is
Akshay,
Will,
yeah.
and then you are ba 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 ba, and then you're going from there to the next meeting, and you're constantly repeating your old thoughts.
How do you realize that, yeah, I'm not learning? I understand that learning is incidental in many cases, but what we want is active learning. And have you seen people, like, what's your experience being? Have you seen people really learning? Because in schools, very difficult to see people learning. You can only see people teaching or guiding
Yeah.
or advising. I don't see a lot of people learning.
Yeah.
And they feel they're learning. They feel they're learning, right? And they almost say like, learning is going to happen anyway. वो तो होता ही है, right? But have you like noticed or experienced or spoken to people or in your experience as a coach, in your experience as a trainer, in your experience as a business consultant, what have you seen around people learning and things like that?
So I think, see, how do you know something, right? I think so if you can broadly take an input and deliver an output in any area, you have some skills. It may be unconscious, it may be conscious. You may not be able to teach it, you may be able to teach it. So that's sort of the way I bucket that. But I think because I came from the movement had a lot of coaching, a lot of training, a lot of that. So I had come with that. But I had to actively put aside coaching and training for some time. And I was like, I'm going to be a student. Now, interestingly, my wife, Selvi, jumped into this and she picked up really quickly. But I kept unconsciously doing things like holding back from looking dumb because I was so used to being the smart person in the room, right? Gravitating towards helping other people when I should actually be asking for help. So there are lots of things that...
You're the consultant.
Yeah, and I think that it became a big liability. It became a big liability. And I remember once I introduced Selvi and I said that we are coaches or something like that. And after that, she's like, don't introduce me as that. I'm not a coach. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to build things. If I coach, that's just a skill. And, at that point, I was like, how can you say that? We work so hard at this, blah, blah, blah. She was right. She was right. And I think being an entrepreneur or taking on the identity that I'm an entrepreneur and coaching is a skill took a long time for me. I'm sad. I feel a little sad that it took so long to learn. But I'm very grateful because now I can learn something and then bring the coaching back to transfer it, right? Because otherwise there are a lot of people who are brilliant at what they do, but they can't unpack for you why they are brilliant. So it's come back a full circle, but there were 3-4 miserable years when I knew I shouldn't be coaching and training and I should actually learn skills, but I was not doing that well also.
So learning has to be active, right? We have to really cognitively metacognition literally in that sense, right? Learning has to be active and learning has to be continuous. And I think I love the fact that you're saying, what's your identity, right? It's so easy for me to say my identity is a teacher or my identity is an educator or my identity. Identity defines us, right? And in many cases, it also helps me sort of align my actions and align my course of behavior in that sense. So, what's my identity? And you're saying when you started identifying yourself as an entrepreneur, and then look at coaching as a skill, you were able to then improve yours?
Yeah, so I think, the distinction here is, or the way I think about it is, there is an identity that you build from the past. And then there's the identity you need to make the future happen.
Wow.
So, I've been a coach, so I walk around saying I'm a coach.
Could there be an identity that people put on you?
Yeah, and usually that's also past. Right? Okay. Because, I would say that if you start really saying that I'm a world-class marketing person and you build skills and all those things, after 6 months, people will be like, some marketing he's doing, right? So people's opinions are a lagging factor of who you are. In fact, this is very true when you meet batchmates. They connect with the person you were when you met them last. They haven't caught up with the identity you have now.
Oh.
Right? So that's
it's stuck in time.
Yeah. So they are still talking about, late night parties till crazy hours or whatever, and you've moved on. I'm not making a comment on that specifically, but I'm just saying that. So I think in a world that's rapidly changing, the ability to say, this is what I want. And these are the pieces of my identity, my mindset that are holding me back actively. You know, it's like that saying, we have met the enemy and he is us.
Yeah.
Right? It is extremely annoying that there's so little to blame in other people. And I know I speak from a place of privilege. Lots of people have good reasons to not pursue the things that they want. But I'm not in that place. I have enough freedom. So when I don't get the things I want done, it's just me sabotaging stuff. It may be a little bit of an oversimplification, but broadly, I think that's true.
And self-sabotaging is definitely a trait that a lot of entrepreneurs and high achievers have. That I think is kind of goes without saying. What insights do you think you've had now with almost 15-20 years of entrepreneurship experience, meeting people, meeting business owners, meeting founders who then set up their companies, got funded, grew. What kind of insights do you think you've come through when it comes to getting something moving? I think when I look at my own teams, I can distinctly say that there are very few people who can get things done. Operationalizing. I have experienced a lot of people in my team say things like, I have an initiation problem. I don't know how to start something. I don't know how to initiate something. I could never figure that out because I can only start. I can't finish.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I started wondering: is it a personality thing? Is it a factor of climate? Is it a factor of culture? Is it just this India's education problem where we've not been able to give skills to people? Or is it like a motivation problem where people don't feel strongly enough to make something happen? And I don't know. I actually don't have the answers to these. But do you have any thoughts and any views on this in all this?
I actually wanted to ask you a question. Among the guys that get things done, what do you think is the differentiating factor? Like, what makes them people that get things done? What are you noticing?
The few things that I have noticed with people who actually get things done is, one, quite a lot of them have restlessness.
Energy, sheer energy.
Energy, man, sheer energy. I want to make this happen. Let me make it happen.
Yeah.
I want to make it happen today.
Yeah.
Not like a year later, not like someday, today. I want to make it happen right now. So one is that sheer restlessness is something that I've seen. Second thing is this sheer ability to hustle, to go out there and talk to people and do what it takes to make that happen.
Yeah.
And the third thing that I've seen is like a certain amount of courage. Certain amount of courage saying, damn, if it fails, I don't care. If it fails, it's okay, I'll make it happen.
Yeah.
I'll still make it happen.
Yeah.
Almost saying, rejecting failure.
Yeah.
Not even thinking failure might happen.
Yeah.
Right? So I've seen these things, and to a certain extent, you get scared of that energy. You feel like, oh my God, this is too reckless. This is like an 18-year-old just got a driving license and he also bought like 20 cans of beer, and he's riding like a 3000 cc truck. But the point is, sometimes it's that sort of destructive, perceptually destructive energy which becomes constructive. So I remember a lot of people would call me when I was young. They would say he's a loose cannonball. He's just explosive and somewhere there. But then to be able to hone that and make things happen, I think that comes. There's this saying, right? Calm seas never make a skilled sailor.
Yeah.
And I think those are the things that I've come through. But what insights have you thought through, and generally it just comes up to you when you start thinking about all these organizations you work with and help, you're solving their problems? Any insights around people and teams and culture and any frameworks that you think that, hey, while this problems are really complex, but there are people who've thought about it. There are some tools, there are some frameworks. These are some of the things that you can think through. Is there anything like that you can think of offhand?
So that's a very broad question.
Of course.
Right? So what I'll do is, let me just give it some structure in terms of just looking at insights alone.
Yeah.
Right?
So and that's what you do best. You bring in structure to...
Yeah, I mean, see, I think the sign of mastery is to know what to ignore. The beginner tries to do everything. If you've done it many times, you know the sequence, you know the pattern. See, first of all, pattern recognition, then the sequence of patterns, right? And I was talking to a founder yesterday, and he's like, "Yaar, time nahi hai. Everybody's busy. How do we get more time, And I told him, you don't get more time, but you do get more skill. And that's the key to unlocking time abundance. There's time poverty in a lot of startups. And that's because leaders model this sort of hustle at the cost of everything. Like one paradox in organizations is the faster things are moving, the more you need to pause. It could be a Friday evening to a Saturday evening. Collectively among the top 6, 7, 10 leaders, and just be like, hey, are we still in the right forest? Right? What is happening here? And the assumption that when things are moving fast, you can fight it by moving faster is a complete fallacy. So if I were to say one thing around organizations, the faster things are moving, learn to slow down collectively. And you can't fight speed with speed. You fight speed with a better model. Metaphorically, I will give this as, imagine we are cycling as fast as we can. And we know we are still like miles away from the outcome that we want. It's better to take 2 days off, figure out if you can build a motorcycle that can move 2 times the speed than cycling harder and faster. So in organization design and in teams, this is called a ceiling of complexity. A ceiling of complexity is when the old model that was working doesn't work anymore. Now, if you don't know how to reinvent the team, if you don't know how to prototype the next set of things, if you don't know how to look for insights, you will push things harder, right? In what you actually need, and this may sound jargony, is you need to be able to find a new reference point. I'll give you a quick little story about this. So, when I was running the movement, I was volunteering with a bunch of other things. And I remember being on a flight, and this thought used to always bother me, and I'm coming back to this thing of, I can't work harder. How will I get all these 50 things I want to do? And I'm still like way behind my list, right? And I'm on this flight to Calcutta, and this guy turns to me and he says, we're chatting, and then I was like, what do you do? And then long story short, he is the son of one of the founders of Kurlon businesses, and they have 19 other businesses that are huge. Kurlon is the most famous. So I was like, how do you manage 19 businesses? I'm having 0.5 business here, and I'm like barely surviving. And he talked about the way you structure the legal, the way you structure the finances, the way you hire. And I realized that my answer to managing was more meetings, more calls, more, So I was a one-trick pony. I was a one-trick pony, right? So instead of adding more meetings, I needed to talk to somebody. If I were to, the question I love, and whenever I sit with teams and they say that this is not happening or this won't happen or we're off track, and usually that's when I come in, is I ask, where else is solving this problem a piece of cake?
Oh.
So for example, when I was working with a company and they were like, our contracts take forever. So I was like, okay, where else does setting contracts up happen really quickly? Right? And why does it take forever? Because they're complex, they're blah, blah, blah. So he said, okay. And we looked around on investment banking. Investment bankers set contracts together really, really quickly. So we just talked to a few investment bankers and they're like, okay, our contracts are in Lego blocks. We have contract creating workshops. Our CEOs sign off before we start. So they gave us a different playbook. So my basic thing is, anytime your model is not working, ask who's getting the outcomes I'm getting, preferably not in your category. Because if it's in your category, you're just copying. If it's outside your category, you're probably bringing something fresh into the category.
And by category, you mean an industry?
See, like for example, if you're a school, don't learn from schools. Right? Ask, for example, what does Google X's R&D lab do differently about learning? What does Lego do about learning? What does hackathons? What would a hackathon look like in a school? So I'm just giving some thoughts, right?
Got it, yeah.
And
it's almost like Einstein said this, right? That if you want to find a solution to a problem, it's just usually don't find the solution in the same level in which the problem was created.
Yeah. So when the principle is this, your understanding of normal is your understanding of normal. It is not the normal. If you can switch your reference point, right? And you can think about it from a different, like I was just talking to a NGO the other day and we were doing some, we call this insight sessions where we sit down and work on insights for them. And they're like, we're doing great work, and they built a crazy recycled cardboard product that allows you to put laptops, and they built a bunch of things. And they're like, our Instagram, our YouTube is stuck at 1,000 users. So I said, okay, what's the goal? So they said 100,000 users. When do you think you'll get there? Well, it took us 1 year to get to 1,000. So take us 100 years, right? So I told him, look, to who is 100,000 not a problem? So they are like people that have YouTube channels at 100,000, 1 million, whatever. So I said, who do you know there? And we looked around the room and somebody's bhai, somebody's some friend, some celebrity. There are 3-4 people, not at 100,000, but at 30-40,000. So I said, can you get on a call with them and say, this is the work I'm doing. I'm doing some innovative work. Is there some way that there's a win-win for you and me? And if you can crack that code, then the model is very simple. The model is just find YouTubers with 30,000 to 100,000 or maybe even 1 million and figure out a way to do the cardboard jam as a way to work with them. Now, my point is this. There are no big goals. There are only small reference points. Right? And there are so many stories around this that I can say, but just I maybe pause.
But I want to tell you something here, right? Because so many people have come to me and say, "Oh, Willie, your schools are so innovative, and you're using all these different technologies and bits and processes and systems, and this is so amazing and so great." And when they go away, I'm like, "No, these are just small little micro solutions that I have actually picked up from other industries."
Yeah.
Like half the time, there are only 3, 4, or 5 education conferences and exhibitions that happen in the country. I go for every other exhibition and conference that happens. It could be in chemicals, it could be in textiles, it could be in security, it could be in electronics, it could be in telecom. And then I'm like, wow, in these industries, they've figured it out. They figured out CRM, they figured out customer, interaction management, data, they figured out blockchain, they figured out, all this tech. It's so easy just to take it and apply it into the school and redesign the process a little bit. And then you have like a class leading process within a school. And I think what you're saying is so true. We got to look outside. We got to look at other industries, and we have to fundamentally accept the fact that there are other people who figured this out and are doing it better than us.
Yeah.
I think that humility, that vulnerability, that humility, that action that we take going out and talking to other people who are doing it well, I think that is tremendous amount of learning is something that I think that really comes through. So we need to think through in terms of what are those. I think problem definition is a problem here, because many a times we may not feel that there is a problem.
Yeah.
Unless you suddenly run out of cash or somebody else comes and tells you there is a problem. And then this whole idea around here that customer is king and all that is kind of, I have a little, I don't know, I'm still trying to process that idea, because if customer is only king, then unless the customer comes back and tells me that there is a problem, I may not feel like there is a problem, hence, and then I may not define it, and then, I may not be able to. Any insights around that? Any experiences around these things? Who sets the standard?
So I think, Naval Ravikant has this statement, play long-term games with long-term people. Like as his bumper sticker, he has a lot of bumper sticker messages, but that's the one that I really like. And for me, what I actively did when I tried to remake myself as an entrepreneur, and to be very honest, I still feel dissonance. I do not feel I'm as hardcore an entrepreneur as most of my friends are, They're very, very successful and all that. Now and then I feel like I'm too much of a softie, and sometimes I feel like, it's not happening. But fortunately I have a wife who has a mind for these things, and most of the time she's rescuing me. But the one thing I did well in hindsight is I sought out people that inspired me. They were too busy for me. So initially I started with, can you mentor me and all this stuff. They're like, boss, after 2 meetings, what I'll do? I've given you 20 pieces of advice, you've not even implemented 2. So then I realized I have to go the other way. What do you want done that's not getting done? I will do projects with you. And that became a game changer for me. So I, to this day, like Ashish Posist, I work on projects that he wants to work on, because it's my chance to learn from somebody. And I think for the rest of my life, I will always find people who are a factor of 10 better than me on something, right? And then I'll, work with them on projects. See, don't discuss ideas. Work together. Try and get something done, because only then you get the DNA of how people operate.
Like the thinking becomes visible.
Yeah, and how the choice making, right? Whenever I see that Ashish makes a different choice from me, I'm asking, how does he see the world that is his choice and not, why was this my choice? Right? And to me, that is priceless. The difference in decision making.
What are the considerations?
Yeah, like why did he end up with that conclusion? I ended up with a different conclusion from him, right? So I think that working together, the other thing that's been really game changing is what I call skill bartering. So right now with my brother-in-law, Theo, he's very good with finances. So I sit with him and I say, this is my finance thing. This is what I did. What would you do if you were me? And he tears it apart very sweetly, right? And I go through that hour of difficulty because my ultimate goal is to express my care by being good at something. Right? Otherwise, everything, you can't spend time, right? In my 20s, my answer to everything is, you're struggling, we'll chat. Oh, you had a celebration, we'll chat. How much more time is there in the day? There's not more time. So my vision over the next 10 years is to build a kind of organizations where even if you don't meet me, you feel cared for because they're organized that way. They're architected that way. Like one quick story is that last week, somebody we didn't hire in the hiring process, and they sent a message back saying, even though I didn't get selected, this is the best learning experience I've had. And this is our hiring process. And some people tell me, Akshay, you over-engineer these things. I'm sure your profit margins would be better if you didn't do it. But yeah, I have pride in the way we hire. I have pride in each of these things, So doing things with care, building systems that care, I think that is, it's something that I love, and I will.
And caring organizations are what the world needs more, because people are spending 8, 9, 10 hours at work. And if they're spending time at work which doesn't care about them, then I don't think they're going to be going back as happy people to families that really need happy, contented, meaningful, purpose-driven individuals. It just doesn't happen. It just becomes bed and breakfast then, in that sense. So, as we were going through this conversation, there were so many questions that you put up, and so beautifully crafted questions. Things like, hey, what is a project that you want me to work on? Or what is a project that is not working for you, and can I help you work on that project? That's a beautiful question. There are a couple of other questions I heard. Things.
Where else is this normal?
Where else is this normal, right? Where is this normal? Let's throw some questions at each other like this. Not like we need answers, but what could some of these questions be for startups, for managers, for new managers, for for new joinees, for new recruits, anything like business owners? What could these questions be? It'll be such a cool thing to do.
Actually, I have a checklist on how to ask better questions.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know.
We got to bring that in here now.
No, but I can't remember it off my top of my head. But I'll tell you a few principles. So
and these are better questions for oneself in terms of directing
any
thought.
level, right? Any level. How do you? So we do this thing called question storming when we do insight sessions, where before you come up with a new idea, a lot of people are asking unhelpful questions. What's wrong with me? Well, the mind's job is to give you an answer. It gave you an answer, right? You lost it at the question. Forget about the answer. So what we do when we do this thing called question storming, right? Let me give you one. Day before yesterday, I was in Chennai running a hackathon with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and just to warm them up, I was like, "Can you tell me some area you're stuck in?" Right? And we were having this situation, and this person said that I want to stop eating unhealthy snacks. We took that as the thing on the weekend, right?
I want to do that too.
So I said, okay, let's ask a better question, right? And we were brainstorming questions. And the question we ended up with is, so we looked at, why do you eat unhealthy snacks? Because unhealthy snacks are tasty, right? So we said, the new question become, how can we eat healthy snacks that are tasty? So that trade-off was what we had to break, right? Then we went to, have you ever eaten healthy snacks that you enjoyed? Right? Or we went the other way. What were the unhealthy snacks and what is it specifically? Was it the texture? Was it the taste? Was it the type of flavor? And suddenly we were looking at this problem that had, the identity was, I eat unhealthy. Like that's something I struggle with, and my wife has really helped me here, right? I eat unhealthy. It's now become, I don't have a system to eat healthy. Right? So if there are no unhealthy snacks at home, what are you going to eat? You're going to only eat the healthy stuff. Right? But it shouldn't feel like a compromise. Right? So initially, Selvi would cook some very fancy snacks that were vegan, this, that, and the other. But now I've got dark chocolate peanut butter, I've got a honey, I've got roasted nuts, I've got like these 5 or 6 flavors that I can order of Dunzo that doesn't rely on her, because that was the next breaking point.
How do I get it to me?
Yeah, because otherwise I'll ask Selvi on a Saturday, can you cook this for me? And then it's a favor she has to do me. Right? So I'm just talking about, when things are repeatedly not happening, and this is a big insight from a guy called BJ Fogg, who's a Stanford professor on behavior design, which he says that when things are not happening, don't try to motivate people, try to make the desired behavior simpler to do. So instead of beating myself up that I'm eating unhealthy, this is my life, my parents were not good role models when it comes, all this nonsense, right? I should just go, what does it take for the default to be healthy? Right? And I'll close with this quick little story that I love saying about the power of systems, which is, the UK was trying to get, people to donate organs, and begging, pleading, putting posters, putting celebrities up, nothing worked. So it was at some 1-digit numbers. They just made one change and it went up like 4-5x. And the change was very simple. You had to go from opting in to opting out. Right?
The
And
default
straight away,
is your
the
opt-in.
default is you're opted in. Now you say you don't want to donate. Right? So this is what I mean by healthy systems. Instead of trying to motivate people, beating them in, saying, kids are not eating, you should not, kids who are poorer than you are not eating. This motivational model is broken. We need to design better systems where the default is care. Like for example, one practice that blows away a lot of people who see the way our companies run now we have a Friday forgiveness checklist. And we bake in 30 minutes to ask forgiveness for each other. The business impact is astonishing.
Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, how does that look like?
So it's very simple. It's just a checklist of...
And any organization can do it no matter how many people you have.
It's just 5-6 questions.
Across.
Yeah. So we usually do it at the highest level. And once forgiveness becomes an operational mechanism, then you start cascading it to the leaders, then you cascade it down. So you go that way. Because if people don't model it, then all this is just theory. But like, for example, a simple question is, what was something you promised this week that you didn't deliver? Come clean. Another thing is, what was something that you said you would do? You didn't do it. And now it looks like an obligation to you. Do you want to still do it? You have a chance to come clean. Right? What was something you expected of somebody that they didn't do? Now, did you not make a specific request? Or did you make a request and they dropped the ball? So the thing is that what we've realized is baggage builds up. And it forms a serious amount of drag to teams and companies. The longer you've played the game, the longer there's a chance that there is junk under the carpet. Institutionalized forgiveness is one of the most powerful ways to keep teams and organizations healthy. So this is an example of translating an insight. Okay, forgiveness is important because human beings need to put the past back where it belongs.
You need to reset.
Yeah, but you have to turn it into a system. Right? So this is an example of translating insight.
That's beautiful, and that's so easy to do. And especially coming from a school, from an educational institution where children are going through their formative years, building their idea and notion of the world, building their principles of working with each other, collaboration, talking, interaction, social connect, all those things, right? Imagine if I can bring this into a classroom. Wow. Imagine if I can bring it into at the level at which children are operating. Rather than saying no pushing, no no hitting, no this, no that. If we can mainstream ideas like forgiveness and compassion and empathy and kindness and helpfulness, and building all these things within our processes. There's no use of saying, we have these 7 values, but if our policies are not reflecting these 7 values, if it's not, I love what he said. He said institutionalize it. If it's not institutionalized, if it's not cast in stone, if it's not reflected in all our systems, our forms, our application, then it may not actually really work. It will just be lip service, right? There'll be so much of cognitive dissonance in that. Just give me 1 or 2 more processes that you probably are using, human processes.
Here's another one that's very popular. And now so many institutions, organizations, teams, startups have taken this, which is sending your top 3 as a WhatsApp message or a Slack message in the beginning of the day and telling us one thing you learned at the end of the day. Every day. What we do as a level up on this is when we go for our offsite, and we do hackathons every 6 weeks. Again, people tell me it's overkill. I'll never do it another way, right? Because we're a distributed team. We don't work in an office. So every Wednesday we meet. And then once in 6 weeks, we take 2 days, we rent out an Airbnb and we work together, all of that. But one thing we do is we look at the last 6 weeks, what were your top learnings and what are your top 5 learnings? And then we put the person in the center and then we do a insight brainstorm. So somebody's insight could be, for example, I really struggle working on these kinds of things. You spend a little time of why that's the case, what's happening. Is there a situation where there's been an exception to the rule and you've done it well? What worked under that, right? And so anyway, so there's so much that can be said, but this is an example of a mechanism.
And
right?
do you think that these processes need to be run only once you've got your hiring right, so that the competency and skills is not really the issue there? Or can it be run across whoever you have, whoever is on your team right now, these processes can be run?
I think it can be applied everywhere. And in fact, my core thesis is talent is not found, it's built. That is my core belief about the thing. You need to have hunger. I can't do anything if you don't want to do anything with your life. But if you have hunger, in 6 to 12 months, you are going to be a rock star. You're going to get 4 years, 5 years ahead of everybody else because the rate of learning inside the company is so fast right? And we have this thing called tiny testing that we haven't got to, which is rapid prototyping. How do you turn your insights into experiments? You can build monsters. And I want to, because my thesis is very simple. I want to build the kind of company where just hanging out makes you a better person. It's like peer pressure, but positive peer pressure.
Yeah.
Right? The peer pressure is to make a dent, right? And to push the needle on anything you can,
This is so incredible, Akshay. I learned so much from this conversation, and in my head, I'm already thinking of the next 2 or 3 podcasts. Like the next thing has to be, how do you turn insights into experiments? That would be an amazing podcast for us to do. But thank you so much for taking this time out today. It's been almost an hour, and time just flew by, and I learned so many things actively listening to these ideas that you've given through. What did you learn from this conversation?
No, I think my biggest thing, and that's my reflection, which is the amount of effort you've put into the quality of the setup, the team. I still haven't unpacked what it means for me, right? But my overall feeling is an attention to craft, a craftsmanship, right? The way you are building this, the care, the thoughtfulness. So I'm leaving inspired. That's one part. I think I need to unpack more about, okay, what does this actually mean? Does this mean I want to level up the quality of work I'm doing? If so, how? What should change? So that part is not clear yet. I think the other thing is, Will, I've always wanted to just chat with you from those days. I got a chance to do that. And I think that, leadership is caught, not taught. When you hang out with people that are pushing the needle, making mischief, it just rubs off on you. The reason I like to hang out with somebody like an Ashish or a Saurabh or, any of these guys is that they are so on fire that they have such a love for life. Just like you have FOMO for your own life, right? You're like, what the hell is going to happen in the next hour? It's going to be amazing, So I think that your enthusiasm, I loved it then, I love it now. The fact that you've not gotten tamed, you've not settled. I see that fire in your eyes. And I think that, the world needs more people like you.
Amazing. Thank you. And with deep gratitude, Akshay, I want to say thank you so much for sharing so openly and so beautifully everything that you do. And we have a lot more podcasts that we need to set up with you, because your learnings, you have a beautiful way of making things simple and actionable. And that is what everybody needs.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks.